Good evening. My name is Shaquita McLean, and this evening I bring to you my Trace the Path presentation. The offense that I chose for the Trace the Path presentation is murder. And I chose murder because both juveniles and adults can be charged with murder, number one. And number two, I'm simply intrigued by it. I am intrigued by the circumstances that lead people to kill other people. In researching different murder cases, people kill people for all kinds of reasons, such as greed, jealousy, the person may be suffering from mental illness, etc. By definition, murder is the killing of another with the mental element of malice afterthought. The criminal justice system bears the responsibility of sanctioning certain behaviors that violate criminal law. The individuals that commit criminal acts will face legal action by going through what is called the trial process. Once the trial process is complete, a sentence or punishment will be given. Criminal punishments could consist of fines, jail, prison, probation, or even community service. Well, first we'll start with juvenile court. Each jurisdiction has a special court just for juveniles, with the purpose being to hear cases involving minors who have been accused of violating a criminal statute. A decision is usually made after arrest as to whether the youth should be detained and charged, released, or transferred into another youth welfare program. To be eligible for juvenile court, the person must be classified as a juvenile, and in most states, the age requirement is 18 years of age. Once a prosecutor formally charges the juvenile after filing a civil petition, the decision is made where the case will be tried. However, some jurisdictions have laws in place that require egregious offenses such as murder to be tried in adult criminal court. For example, in the case of Jordan Brown, this is a picture of Jordan. This was Jordan at 11 years of age. This is Jordan Brown now, 17 years of age. What happened with Jordan? Jordan was actually charged as an adult for 2 counts of first-degree murder of his stepmother, Kinsey Hook, and her unborn child. She was 8 months pregnant at the time she was shot in the back of the head. At the time the murders were committed, if Jordan had been tried and convicted at that time, he actually would have been the youngest person in U.S. history to face life in prison without the possibility of parole. The U.S. Supreme Court banned the death penalty for juveniles back in 2005. However, the case was not open and shut. Pennsylvania Supreme Court remanded the case back to juvenile court to allow Brown's defense attorneys to file a motion for a new trial to challenge the evidence surrounding the case against him. Therefore, cases involving juveniles are not always cut and dry in comparison to adult cases. The case of Jordan Brown proves that. The judge presiding over the case did deny a new trial back in 2015. Jordan is currently serving his time in a detention center until he turns 21. He is now 17. And also, in researching this matter further, what I found was that a lot of the evidence against Jordan was really circumstantial, because the prosecution's case was pretty much centered around the fact that only someone living in the home could have committed the murders. There were other children in the home, but Jordan was the youngest child in the home at the time, and there were not any other adults in the home. What I find interesting about this case, the months and weeks leading up to Kinsey's death and her unborn child, Kinsey was receiving death threats from an ex-boyfriend. 2 weeks prior to her murder, he threatened to kill her because he found out her youngest 4-year-old daughter was not his child. So this is where this case gets interesting. However, now what we'll look at the criminal trial process for adults. The criminal justice system bears the responsibility of sanctioning certain behaviors that violate criminal law. I wanted to stress that and repeat that again. It's no different for adults. The individuals that commit criminal acts will face legal action by going through the trial process. However, criminal defendants have a right to go to trial under the Sixth Amendment for offenses for which the maximum period of punishment is 6 months or longer and have legal representation. There are many steps that occur before the trial process actually begins to ensure that the defendant's constitutional rights are protected. The criminal court trial process can be broken down into 12 stages: arrest, the decision to prosecute, initial appearance, the setting of bail, holding a preliminary hearing, selecting a defense attorney, convening the grand jury, holding the arraignment, deciding pretrial motions, engaging in plea negotiations, conducting a trial, and imposing a sentence. It is important to understand the roles of a defense attorney, prosecuting attorney, judge, and jury. Criminal defense attorneys play a vital role in defending the accused who have been charged with a variety of criminal charges that include assault, rape, robbery, murder, etc. in a court of law. A defense attorney must be able to research, prepare, and argue on behalf of the defendant or accused to ensure the defendant is given a fair trial. A prosecuting attorney has several important responsibilities and serves a critical role throughout the criminal justice process. The prosecutor is employed by the state. He or she is not an attorney but represents the interest of everyone. The prosecution has other responsibilities, which include the following. Once a crime has been committed, the prosecution will make a decision to bring a case to trial based on the amount of sufficient evidence pertaining to the case. Prosecutors will work with law enforcement and even witnesses to help determine the validity of a case. Prosecutors are also responsible for seeking justice and not solely to convict. Prosecutors are also responsible for building cases against defendants. As jurors, they are charged with the responsibility of listening to witnesses' testimony and evidence to make a decision about the defendant's guilt or innocence. Criminal court judges are charged with the responsibility of presiding over a jury trial. The judge will ensure the trial procedure is followed, educate, and instruct the jury. Now let's discuss rehabilitation versus punishment. There are differences when making a comparison between classical and positive treatments. Years ago, people believed that people committed criminal acts of their own free will. Therefore, their punishment is all about deterrence, which is the fear of crime, and incapacitation, unable to commit future crimes. Positive treatment is all about rehabilitation. The belief is that if the root cause of the problem is fixed, then the offender has a chance at being rehabilitated and on their way to being productive members of society. Many people say yes to rehabilitation and no to punishment. The belief is that we should treat inmates with the same dignity and respect as anyone else. In addition, careful consideration should be given to how inmates are treated during their incarceration because it could impact how they act once released back into society. Both juveniles and adults find themselves in certain situations. There are many reasons why both commit criminal acts. Again, the goal should be to discourage others from committing future crimes and returning back to deal with the justice system. So now we'll look at ethical issues in the justice system. What is ethics? Ethics is defined as a set of rules of behaviors based on ideas about what is morally good and bad. Ethics is important and even more so in the field of criminal justice. Professionals in the criminal justice field are in positions of power and prominence and make life-changing decisions that impact people's lives every day. Therefore, it is very important and necessary that they want to do what is right and remain free of any bias. None of us are perfect, and from time to time, we make mistakes. However, criminal justice professionals should be held accountable for their actions and are held to higher standard. Criminal justice practitioners deal with challenging and ethical situations on a continuous basis. According to Pollack, there are 4 common ethical elements that each criminal justice professional encounters. They are placed in situations where they have to use discretion, they have to enforce the law, uphold constitutional protections, and all are public servants. Officers and criminal justice practitioners should exhibit ethical behaviors at all times. Officers are charged with helping to ensure public safety. The work of police and correctional officers are in public service. Therefore, when an officer displays unethical behavior and misconduct, it erodes public trust and confidence. Officers should always act in a professional manner and follow the code of ethics that have been set. When a professional is found to be in various positions that have been deemed unethical, such as police brutality, corruption, etc., it reflects negatively on other professionals in the criminal justice field, therefore making it difficult to gain the respect and trust from the public that they serve. Police brutality is a civil rights violation that occurs when law enforcement officers use excessive force that is more than necessary. And just in recent years, officers have, been in the media time and time again about how they have used excessive force against juveniles and adults. During the Middle Ages, anyone accused of a crime had no opportunity to seek legal representation, be allowed their due process, or even participate in the judicial process at all. Basically, if the kings or royalty believed you to be guilty, then you were guilty, and they would inflict severe punishment. Today, that is not the case. A person charged with a crime does have the right to seek legal counsel, and they are given their due process. Due process is the multiple criminal justice procedures and processes